Greetings, lore seekers, and welcome to another episode of the Lost Archives, a Star Wars Legends lore series. So today, I'm going to be talking about the Aing-Tii Monks. The question here is, though, who exactly were the Aing-Tii and the monks that the galaxy had some interactions with? As you can see from the image, they were a bipedal species with many tongues and a tail. Now, the species was known to be very reclusive. In fact, they would dissuade anyone from entering their territory or even coming near their worlds. Now, the way in which they did this, the Force-sensitive members of their race, the Aing-Tii Monks, would go out in their organic-style ships and use advanced weaponry and various Force tricks to prevent anyone from encroaching on their space. Their space being located near the Kathol Rift in the Maw Cluster, which meant it was actually very hard to get around anyway, unless you had certain abilities or devices. Now, the only real known members who were ever seen off the planet were the Force-sensitive Aing-Tii warrior monks, who would display such reclusive nature and even xenophobia against other races and outright violence to anyone who would try and learn more about their culture. That being said, there were some that seemed to have spoken to the Aing-Tii and not really had any negative side effects other than being dissuaded from going into their territory. For example, the Jedi Order knew of the Aing-Tii Monks before the fall of the Jedi and the Old Republic. Yoda knew of them and spoke quite highly of them. In fact, he even sent a smuggler to them to have them cured. I do believe it is on this word that George Kadash, I may be pronouncing that wrong, was able to enlist the help of the Aing-Tii. In fact, he spent many years with them, and they developed a way in which they could talk, because the Aing-Tii don't actually talk vocally. They talk using various amounts of social cues, using their tongues, as well as pheromones. But because George couldn't do this, they developed technology that could translate their form of communication into Galactic Common, or Basic as it's known. Something that they would use later on when communicating with Jedi Knights Jason Solo and eventually Grandmaster Luke Skywalker and Jedi Knight Ben Skywalker. I nearly said Ben Solo then, that's the Disney canon creeping into my brain there. It's not what we're here to talk about. It was also largely due to their secretive nature that a lot of the information that these individuals learned wasn't really revealed to the rest of the galactic community, except in the case of the latter, where Luke and Ben did copy a lot of the information they'd learned into the Jedi archives. I'm assuming this is probably because they have usually some sort of agreement with anyone who comes to their world and learns about their culture that they're not to reveal it. Due to the events in the books when Ben and Luke were there, I assume they didn't make them have this promise. That is just purely speculation. Anyway, moving on to their technology. One of the first notable differences between the Aing-Tii's technology and the rest of the galactic communities is that they appear to use ships that have a slightly organic origin. In fact, if you didn't know any better, you would consider that some of their ships might be Yuuzhan in nature. Nothing could be further from the truth, because they still do use mechanical components. One big notable difference from regular ships of the Star Wars galaxy and the Aing-Tii is that their ships don't use your standard star hyperdrives. Instead, they are able to instantaneously appear to whatever point they want in system. Though there are some rumours that this could be a force power that they all use in conjunction to jump the ship into place. Moving on to their weapon systems. Their weapon systems are comparable in terms of power and projection with both the Galactic Republic and the Galactic Empire, but they are vastly different in the fact that they use null energy. Those of you who play the game Stellaris know that null energy is perfect for punching through enemy shields. It can do a significant damage to the hull as well, because it is a type of radiation. They also would use what's known to as energy web projectors. I'm assuming this is some type of energy torpedo. I'd have to look into it more. But considering that torpedoes are used to take out hardpoint targets like hull and armour, these would be able to rip through ships with devastating ease. In fact, most ships that have come up against the Aing-Tii, including corvettes and Imperial 2 Star Destroyers, have been quite easily destroyed, even when appearing to be at a numerical disadvantage. On that note, in fact, the Aing-Tii ships seem to have adopted a kamikaze-like nature as well, where they would ram ships with theirs. It seems that they have had an immense amount of time put into developing the structural integrity of their ship to be able to ram and punch through even Imperial 2 class Star Destroyers, which is one of the Empire's more improved and tested warships, improving upon some of the various weaknesses of the Imperial 1 class Star Destroyer. I'm now going to move on to one of the only few melee weapons we really see from the Aing-Tii, which would be the Fortress Stun Stick. Essentially, it appears to be a wooden stick wrapped in silvery wire. Now, what it is able to do is deliver a powerful electric charge that could render somebody unconscious, or in high doses probably even kill. And this was able to penetrate armour and electrocute the victim regardless of what they were wearing. Ben Skywalker does note in the book when he has to encounter this weapon that the reason why it's able to penetrate through armour is it is being used by a species that appears to have natural rock-like armour on their skin. Anyway, finally, moving on to the Aing-Tii Monks themselves and their beliefs on the Force. So, to begin firstly, the Aing-Tii believed that their Force abilities came from those who dwelled beyond the veil. Now, these were the ones who gifted them their knowledge of the Force and how to use it. Under speculation, I believe that this is a advanced civilization with fully trained Force sensitives came and visited them, taught them how to use the Force, and then left. This eventually became a form of worship, and this is what they followed. That being said, they developed along a path that they don't see the Force like the Jedi and the Sith do. They see it as like a rainbow of many different colours and many different aspects, and that anyone, even if you aren't Force sensitive, can manipulate the Force in some way. Now, the Aing-Tii make pilgrimages around areas of the Kathol Rift looking for their gods, essentially, and any artifacts they might have left behind, and they take these artifacts back to their home and then they store them below ground. Such artifacts can be of light, dark side, or even grey origin, and can do anything from giving you various visions, being able to sense the dark side, or even doubling your Force potential. When Luke touches one of these items, his Force potential becomes so strong in the Force, a lost tribe of the Sith is able to detect him across thousands of light years. And then they begin the hunt for Luke and his son. Anyway, that's a story for another time. I am getting off topic. One of the other interesting aspects about the Aing-Tii is that they do have a belief of trying not to use their Force abilities. They will use them quite heavily when they're on their ships. I did a bit of checking. It turns out that little instantaneous travel ability of theirs works within conjunction of their Force powers. They can actually do it themselves in an instant, pop inside a ship, deal with what's in there and pop back out. And the really scary thing is they can teach this to non-Force sensitives as well, which would actually help support their belief that non-Force sensitives can manipulate the Force. Given enough training, but not to the same degree as someone who is naturally strong with the Force. Moving on to Force abilities, we have, as I've just mentioned, the instantaneous travel ability, though you do need to know where you're going. And there is what is known as flow walking. Now, flow walking works that if you know of an event in the past and the location of the event, you can actually go back in time and witness the event. You can't really do much to change the event because you can make small alterations, and in your memory it will appear that alteration has happened, but you can't really stop the Force from acting in certain ways. It's not powerful enough to do that, and so any events that you do try and change won't stop the natural flow of the Force, and the Force will just restore it back to what it was originally. So this technique is primarily used by the Aing-Tii and certain other Force users who learn of it to witness certain events. There's a reason why in episode 3, whenever I'm watching the scene where Anakin is shouting, "It's unfair," saying he's not on the council, is because just sat behind Mace's chair, there is the Sith Lord Darth Caedus watching the entire thing happen using flow walking. Caedus. Yes, Darth Caedus was temporarily a student of the Aing-Tii before his fall to the dark side, and one of the skills they parted onto him was flow walking, though they eventually did consider him to be a failed student as he didn't seem to grasp their version of the Force. Another Force technique that they would employ as well is Force-based communication, and this was a trick they actually set upon Master Luke Skywalker as well, is to find a way to communicate with them using only the Force. Luke eventually did discover this, and then once he had passed this little test of theirs, they went to using the conventional translator that they had developed when they had George on planet. I'm probably still butchering that pronunciation. Now, one of the other interesting things is they could use a variety of other Force powers as well, from push, pull, burst of speed, and all the regular ones that you see in most games, and various other things. Thinking about it, I may actually do a video series on Force powers at some point, but I think there'll be 1 to 3 Force powers in each video to make them a bit longer. Another interesting tidbit on the Aing-Tii's view of the Force as well is that they actually don't, like many other people who view the Force, think that the Force has predetermined destiny for everybody. It's similar to certain religions in our own society where, you know, things are predetermined, you've got a set faith, blah blah blah. The Aing-Tii don't believe that. They believe that you are all free to make your own choice, but you are guided by the Force, which might explain something a bit curious about them. The only reason really why the galaxy knows a little bit about them, other than, you know, encounters with mysterious ships, is that they will actually leave their own territory for one specific reason, and that is mostly to hunt down slavers. If you happen to be in the Maw area and they notice you're enslaving people, you better watch out, because they're going to come for you, and they will vehemently attack any slavers and anything else that does anything in the process of slavery, because they vehemently hate the practice. Something that is probably going to bite the Hutts in the backside at some point. Anyway, lore seekers, this has been an overview on the Aing-Tii Monks, a little bit on the Aing-Tii species as well. If you like what you heard, feel free to like and comment. Perhaps leave me a bit of criticism down in the comments, as that does help the channel out a great deal. If you'd like to stay up to date with the channel, please subscribe and check the bells for notifications to get a notification once I release some new content. As always, my sources will be in the description below, as well as where I got the Aing-Tii Monk image, and as well as the music used in this video. And I will catch you on another episode of the Lost Archives. Have a good day, lore seekers, and take care.